I knew I shouldn't have gone. The place was a high-end rooftop bar downtown, all polished marble, glowing bottles, and soft jazz echoing off the glass walls. It was the kind of place she loved. She always said the view made her feel untouchable. I hated that word even then. It would have been our 5th anniversary. Not that it mattered anymore. I showed up in the suit she once picked for me. Dark charcoal, sharp cut. It still fit, but everything else about the night felt foreign. I ordered the most expensive single malt they had. No ice. I didn't plan on staying long. Call it curiosity, or maybe just a cruel need for closure. Then she walked in. Claire. Same red lipstick. Same predator heels. Same smug smirk she used to reserve for our bedroom mirror. Except this time, she brought an entourage. 3 friends who always pretended to like me, now laughing a little too loud and scanning the crowd like they were looking for prey. They saw me before she did. Or maybe she planned it that way. She turned, saw me sitting alone with my glass of gold, and smiled like she'd just spotted a museum exhibit, something old, outdated, a relic of her past that she was proud to have outgrown. She leaned into her little crowd of hyenas and whispered something. And that's when it happened. Laughter erupted. Not the polite kind. Not even the fake kind. It was sharp, echoing, deliberate. And she said it loud enough for everyone to hear. He's still waiting, like a faithful dog. Another round of laughter. I just smiled. That's the part they'll remember. Not the insult. Not the gutting words. No, what stayed with them was how I didn't flinch. Didn't get up. Didn't shout or run. I just raised my glass to her like I was toasting the end of a play. And I drank. God, that whiskey. Smooth and savage. Like the life I'd built for her before she decided I was no longer enough. Let them laugh. Let them think I was just the fool she left behind. A good man turned into a punchline. What they didn't know, what she didn't know, is that I never stopped watching. And I don't mean with cameras or spyware. No, I watched people. I listened. I paid attention to the details everyone else ignored. Because love makes you blind, sure, but heartbreak sharpens your sight. And I'd been seeing everything for months. Her late-night strategy sessions. The secret flights booked under her assistant's account. The burner phone she thought I didn't know about. The affair with a married politician from her fundraising events. The one who campaigned on family values while sneaking her into hotels under his chief of staff's name. I knew it all, and I had everything. Emails, voicemails, photos, financial transactions that would make the IRS sweat. DMs that could sink a re-election faster than a leaked sex tape. And that night, while she clinked glasses with her plastic friends and smeared her lipstick on flutes of Prosecco, I walked out silently, got in my car, and pressed upload. No warning. No threats. Just one click. The folder was titled Untouchable. The irony still makes me smile. By morning, her face was on every blog that once kissed her heels. The politician's office issued a no comment. His wife filed for divorce. Claire's PR firm dropped her. Her book deal vanished. All she had left was the echo of that laughter and the image of me sitting in that bar, silent, still, and smiling. Just a faithful dog? No, I was the storm they didn't see coming. The fallout came faster than even I anticipated. By sunrise, her name was trending, for all the wrong reasons. Claire Everett caught in political scandal was plastered across headlines like war paint. The video snippets, grainy hotel footage, side-by-side calendar entries, matching timestamps, were enough to create chaos. The screenshots of those oh-so-personal messages? That was the death blow. The media tore into her like wolves on a wounded deer. All those years she spent perfecting her image, graceful, driven, philanthropic, shredded in 24 hours. Publicly, she claimed it was a coordinated smear campaign. Privately, she was calling every contact she had, begging for someone, anyone, to save her reputation. They didn't. Because people like her live on perception. And when that crumbles, there's nothing left. I wasn't trying to ruin her. No, I was just giving her a taste of the truth she thought she was too clever to choke on. She called me 3 times that day. I didn't answer. Let her sit in the silence. I want to work like it was any other Tuesday. My inbox was full of congratulations. Of course, none of them mentioned the scandal directly. People aren't that bold. But the tone was unmistakable. There's a specific kind of respect reserved for a man who takes betrayal and turns it into strategy. She showed up at my door that night. Hair tied back, no makeup, wearing the sweatshirt I used to leave on the couch. The one she always said smelled like dust and bad coffee. Now she wore it like armor. "You planned this," she said, voice hoarse, eyes wide with disbelief. "You really did it." I stepped aside and let her in. Not out of compassion. I just wanted to see her unravel up close. She stood in the middle of the living room, our old living room, technically. Nothing had changed since she left. The same gray couch. The same coffee table with that scratch from her wine bottle. It was like a crime scene frozen in time. "I could lose everything," she whispered. "You should have thought of that when you were in room 607 at the Fairmont," I said calmly. She flinched. "Good. I made a mistake," she said, stepping toward me. "He meant nothing. It was stupid." "No," I corrected. "Stupid is forgetting your personal assistant uses the same cloud account for all devices. You were careless." She looked like she might cry. I didn't care. "You wanted to humiliate me," I said, voice low. "In front of your friends. In public. On our anniversary." Her eyes darted away. No apology came. Was the laugh worth it? I asked. She didn't answer. "Because now," I continued, "every time someone Googles your name, they'll see who you really are. Not the curated, camera-ready version. The unfiltered Claire Everett, liar, manipulator, political liability." "Please," she said, her voice cracking. "You've made your point. Can we talk about this? Privately?" I studied her for a moment, then smiled, cold and measured. "Everything about us is private now," I said. "Except your lies. Those belong to the public." She took a shaky breath and turned to leave. Just before the door shut behind her, I called out, "By the way, I never stopped loving you. I just stopped lying to myself about who you were." Click. Silence. And for the first time in years, peace. Because you don't heal by forgiving people who treat your dignity like a doormat. You heal by standing up, walking away, and making sure they can never walk over you again. 3 days after the explosion, my phone rang again. Not her this time. It was Marcus Lyle, head of PR for Everett Futures, Claire's personal brand turned consultancy/vanity project. The same guy who once told me, with a too-slick smile and an expensive watch, that I was lucky to be married to a rising star. He'd said it in the tone of a man describing a lottery win, not a marriage. Now he sounded like someone trying to mop up blood with a napkin. "Hey, can we talk? Off the record." "About what?" "About the, situation. You've made your point, Ethan. It's gotten messy, and look, you're smart. Everyone's seen that. But if this continues, she might lose everything. We're talking clients, sponsorships, board seats." "You think I care?" There was a pause. Then a different tone crept into his voice. More rehearsed. Less desperate. "Look, there's still time to get ahead of this. Maybe release a joint statement. Say there was a misunderstanding. Maybe you're working on things. Save face for everyone." Joint statement. Save face. I almost laughed. "Let me ask you something, Marcus. Would you have called me if I hadn't made that post?" More silence. "Would you have reached out when she was out there treating our marriage like an old handbag she left at a bar?" "No. You would have written the press release announcing her independent journey and posted some sun-drenched photo of her in a blazer, smiling like she didn't just burn a house down. I'm just trying to protect her brand." "She's not a brand to me, Marcus. She's a betrayal." Click. I ended the call and tossed the phone onto the couch. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. Instead, I went to the basement, my sanctuary. Old wood-paneled walls, a battered desk, and folders thick with evidence I never meant to use. When you live with someone who's slowly hollowing out your trust, you start archiving the moments. You don't know why at first. You just do. Every canceled dinner. Every strange charge on the credit card. Every quiet night where she said, "I'm just tired," but her phone lit up 3 more times after that. I'd cataloged them all. Now I spread them out like weapons. Photos. Receipts. Schedules. Her digital signature authorizing an expenses-only event trip to London, which just happened to overlap with that same married politician's private security records. Even had the catering invoice that listed her dietary preferences and his. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was justice. I started assembling a file. Not to release yet. This wasn't about ruining her again. It was about having options. Power. She'd taken so much of my dignity without ever asking, and now that I had the upper hand, I planned to hold it as long as I needed. Let her sweat. Let her wonder. Because in betrayal, timing is everything. And patience? Patience is what separates the wrecked from the victorious. The next morning, I took a walk through the old part of town. The bookstore where we used to browse on Sundays was still there. The bar where we met was closed now, some new place going in. All those memories we made were still on the map. But they weren't mine anymore. They were echoes. Shells. And somehow, that didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. In fact, it felt like freedom. I wasn't the same man who bent over backwards to make her happy. I wasn't the one begging for scraps of attention while she chased status. I wasn't the loyal husband waiting at home with wine while she played her games behind locked hotel doors. No. Now I was the one with the whole chessboard in front of me. And I wasn't playing defense anymore. By the end of the week, the vultures started circling her. First, it was the lifestyle magazine that once ran a glowing piece on her, redefining success as a modern woman. Now, they ran a retrospective digging into her past relationships, campaign entanglements, and questionable consulting fees. The comments were brutal. The headlines used words like calculated, deceptive, and the kiss of death, inconsistent with her public persona. Her agent dropped her. The women who used to tag her in filtered brunch photos were suddenly silent. One even deleted every post she'd ever made with Claire in it. The digital purge was swift and thorough. I'd seen enough empires fall to know what it looks like when allies retreat. And Claire? She was flailing. She texted me once. Just 3 words. "Are you done?" I didn't respond. I was busy having lunch with an old friend of hers, Maya. The kind of friend who always hovered on the edge of her inner circle, never quite accepted, never quite rejected. Maya used to tell Claire she was too critical of people. Claire used to smile and say, "That's why I win." Turns out, Maya didn't forget that. Turns out, Maya saw a lot over the years. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said over martinis. But she used to laugh about how easy it was to manipulate people. "Especially you." My jaw clenched. Specifics. Maya took a sip, leaned back, and said, "Your anniversary trip to Florence?" She only picked that because the guy she was texting back then said Tuscany was too cliché. She didn't even want to go. She just wanted to show you could afford it. "Which guy?" Maya blinked. "Oh, you don't know about those ones." She handed me her phone. Photos. Screenshots. Names I didn't recognize. Messages that went back farther than I expected, before the politician. Before the divorce talk even started. She was never just unfaithful. She was strategic. Keeping me around for stability, for status, for the illusion. While she tasted whatever flavor of ego-stroking validation she needed on the side. I had to laugh. It wasn't funny. Not really. But the absurdity of it all, the hours I spent planning anniversary surprises, romantic dinners, thoughtful notes tucked into her laptop bag. She'd kept them. She showed them to people. Bragged about how adorable I was. Like I was some trained pet doing tricks. A faithful dog, right? I thanked Maya. Paid for lunch. And I told her something that surprised even me. I'm not angry anymore. She gave me a look like she didn't believe me. But I meant it. See, anger is what they expect. Fury, destruction, flames, they prepare for that. They spin it, twist it, turn it into their redemption arc. But indifference? Silence? That shakes them. That breaks them. Because when someone who loved you stops reacting, stops engaging, stops fighting, that's when they realize they've truly lost. But I wasn't just going to disappear. I had one more move. The final piece of the puzzle came in the form of a USB drive delivered to my office. No return address. Just a single word on the label. Loyalty. Inside? Voice memos. Claire, talking to someone, probably the politician. Complaining about how stupid I was. How he'd never suspect a thing. How you just have to stroke his ego, and he folds like origami. I played them once. Then twice. Then I copied the files and put the original in my desk drawer. I didn't send them to the press. No, I sent them to her parents. Old money. Old values. Image-obsessed. The kind of people who smiled wide in family photos but whispered judgment into their wine glasses. They adored me. And they loathed scandal. Within hours, her mother called me. She sounded like someone trying to hold a family portrait together with duct tape and prayer. "We didn't know. Ethan, we're so sorry." "I'm not looking for apologies," I said. "Just closure." They'd hosted our wedding on their estate. She'd promised forever under their perfectly trimmed hedges and string lights. Now she was about to become their biggest embarrassment. And I was finally free of pretending I was ever part of her world. The silence came 2 days later. No articles. No statements. No new scandals. Just the quiet. It's funny, when someone like Claire falls, you expect an explosion, 1,000 voices screaming in judgment. But what hurts more than the noise is when no one speaks your name at all. When the headlines move on. When the attention, her lifeblood, dries up like a well someone forgot to refill. That's what I gave her. Not fire. Oblivion. I didn't expect to enjoy it, but I did. Not out of cruelty, at least not entirely, but because I realized something. She built her identity around being wanted, desired, relevant. So I took that away. I let her keep her bank account, her wardrobe, her empty little condo in the part of the city she used to brag about. But I stripped her of the audience. And without that, she was just another woman with a shattered mirror and a silence she couldn't dress up in designer labels. The next time I saw her was accidental. Charity gala. I didn't go to make a scene. Truth is, I'd forgotten she'd ever chaired it. But I was invited by one of the donors I'd been helping with strategy. Apparently, word of my little situation had gotten around in more professional circles, and they liked how I'd handled it, with restraint, intelligence, and just enough cold steel to make them believe I had backbone. Funny how divorce can become a networking advantage. I walked in wearing a tailored black suit. No tie. No wedding band. People glanced, whispered, and then I saw her. Claire stood near the champagne table in a dark green dress. The kind that probably cost more than my first car. It hugged her frame like a last desperate attempt to remind the room who she used to be. But the room had moved on. No one asked her to speak this year. No cameras followed her around. She smiled too hard at passing donors, laughed just a little too loud at dry jokes. A performance, but one the audience no longer applauded. Not really. Then her eyes met mine. I didn't blink. I didn't smirk. I just raised my glass, water, not whiskey this time, and took a sip like I was toasting the end of a long, unnecessary play. She looked away first. That was the moment I knew she truly understood. I didn't want her back. I didn't miss her. I didn't even hate her. I was indifferent, which, to someone like Claire Everett, is a fate worse than public shame. She came over eventually, of course. Couldn't help herself. Ethan, she said, voice clipped and overly polite, like I was a former coworker she ran into at the airport. You look, well. I am, I said. Very. She hesitated. I've been thinking about everything, about how fast it all spiraled. We never talked. Nothing to talk about. Come on, Ethan. We were married. I looked at her, really looked. The perfectly styled hair, the flawless foundation, the trembling edge in her eyes she thought she was hiding. You made a joke on our anniversary, remember? I said. She swallowed. I wasn't thinking. It was stupid. No. It was honest, I replied. It was the first time you told the truth in public. She shifted her weight. People make mistakes. Sure, I said. And sometimes, they pay for them in full. Plus interest. Her mask cracked for just a second. And in that second, I didn't see the woman I married. I saw the one who stood in front of her friends and mocked the man who once built her a life out of nothing but devotion. And I felt nothing. I walked away. Let her stand there in a dress bought for a spotlight that no longer wanted her. I didn't owe her a dramatic exit. She wasn't worth the energy. Desperation has a smell to it. It's not something you can quite describe. It's not perfume or sweat or alcohol, but it lingers. Thick. Sour. And when she showed up unannounced at my place, that smell was radiating off her like cheap cologne. It was raining. Of course it was. Like some screenwriter was getting paid by the cliché. I opened the door to find her standing there, soaked, hair clinging to her face. No umbrella. No coat. Just a thin blouse sticking to her skin like cellophane. Vulnerable. Intentional. Ethan, she started, voice small. I didn't move. Didn't invite her in. Just leaned on the doorframe and waited. Can I come inside? I paused. Stared. You got 5 minutes. She stepped in like a woman expecting to be forgiven for crimes she didn't consider that serious. Like the past year was just one big lover's quarrel waiting for the right wine-soaked apology to undo it all. I didn't sit. Neither did she. Why are you here? I asked flatly. She took a shaky breath, clasping her hands like a child rehearsing for confession. I lost the consulting deal. The firm won't renew my contract. That's not my problem. The board seat's gone too. Also not my problem. She blinked. This wasn't going how she rehearsed it in front of the mirror. I made mistakes. I almost laughed. Is that supposed to be an admission? Or a negotiation? Tears welled up. Real or staged, who knows? It didn't matter. I thought, maybe, we could talk. Talk? Her voice quivered. About us. There it was. The real reason. The career was crumbling. The inner circle had turned. The invitations stopped arriving. And suddenly, she remembered the loyal man she used to mock. The dog who waited. Except I wasn't waiting anymore. Claire, I said, voice steady, calm, final. You don't want me. You want the stability I used to represent. The safe house you burned to the ground. But sweetheart, there's no house left. Her lower lip trembled. She was still beautiful, of course. They always are. That's how they get away with it for so long. People mistake beauty for innocence. I used to. Not anymore. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. Now I did laugh. No, Claire. You never stopped loving what I could do for you. She broke then. The tears came heavy. She covered her face like the victim she always wanted to be. I'm alone, she sobbed. Everyone's abandoned me. I didn't flinch. That's because you taught them how to treat you, I said. You showed them loyalty was optional. And when you ran out of people to betray, you finally had to sit alone with yourself. She wiped her eyes, breathing hard, desperate for a thread to pull. I thought we could start over. Now that was rich. Start over? Claire, I started over the moment you laughed at me in front of your friends. You just didn't realize it. The rain pounded harder outside. A perfect soundtrack for a closing scene. You always were cold, she hissed finally, anger breaking through the cracks. No, I replied, stepping forward just enough to make her lean back. I was loyal. And you mistook that for weakness. Now you're learning the difference. I opened the door. The rain waited for her. She hesitated, hoping for one last miracle. One crack in my armor. There wasn't one. You should go. And she did. For the first time since our marriage, she obeyed without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. And I exhaled. Not relief. Not grief. Victory. You'd think that'd be the end of it. She walked into the rain. I shut the door. Done. But when people like Claire lose control, they don't quietly fade into the background. No. They scramble. They pivot. They find new angles. She couldn't rebuild her public image, too much evidence, too many burned bridges, but there was one thing left she thought she could weaponize. Pity. She started telling people she was the victim. Of me. It began with small whispers, through mutual acquaintances, through carefully placed conversations at charity functions she still managed to attend. He was always distant, cold, controlling. The narrative shifted from power couple gone wrong to poor Claire, married to a man who emotionally neglected her. Classic projection. I saw it coming before it started. Because that's who she really was, a master manipulator who relied on appearances to cover for rot. At first, it was amusing. Then it started costing me. A few clients backed out of contracts. A few invitations stopped coming. Business associates grew colder, their wives dropping subtle, loaded questions over dinners. I heard you've been through quite a bit. Must have been hard being married to someone so ambitious. They never came right out and said it. They never needed to. The poison works best when it's slow, invisible, and plausibly deniable. She was trying to starve me professionally. She couldn't break me personally, so she went after my reputation. So I did what I do best. I prepared. The thing about Claire was that she always underestimated me. She thought I was the simple one, the safe one. She forgot that while she was busy perfecting her facade, I was learning every inch of her foundation. And I still had the ace up my sleeve, the files, the voice recordings, the financial documents, the hotel records, the burner phone backups, and most importantly, the offshore accounts. Because betrayal isn't free. I had proof of undeclared funds she tried to hide during the divorce negotiations. Money funneled through shell companies tied to that married politician she clung to before his wife served him public humiliation on a silver platter. Illegal? Absolutely. Actionable? Without question. But I didn't drop the bomb immediately. No, that would have been too easy. Instead, I made a call to a journalist I'd gotten to know over the years. The kind who valued facts over clickbait, but wasn't afraid of printing uncomfortable truths when they were fully documented. I handed him the folder. He didn't even blink. Jesus Christ, he muttered as he flipped through the evidence. How deep does this go? Deep enough, I said. Print it when you're ready. Are you sure? This will finish her. That's the idea. He closed the file and shook my hand. When this runs, he said, she's done. Permanently. I smiled. Then don't hold back. Because some people don't deserve quiet endings. They deserve accountability. They deserve to drown in the mess they made, without me there to pull them out. The article dropped on a Thursday. Perfect timing. Right before the weekend, giving every news outlet, blogger, and gossip columnist plenty of time to chew on it, dissect it, amplify it. The headline hit like a sledgehammer. The Untouchable, inside Claire Everett's web of affairs, fraud, and political corruption. Subtle? No. Effective? Absolutely. Within minutes, it went viral. It wasn't just gossip this time, it was criminal. The offshore accounts, the tax fraud, the silent payments, the influence peddling with that politician's campaign fund. The full map of how she used her relationships, both personal and political, as stepping stones. The receipts were all there. Dates, transfers, emails, voice memos. Unspinnable. Her name didn't just trend. It exploded. By noon, her attorney had released a no comment. By 3 p.m., the federal investigators started circling. The politician released his statement first, publicly denouncing her and calling her a private citizen whose personal actions are separate from my campaign. Coward, but predictable. He was never going to bleed for her. By Friday, several of Claire's former clients and charity board seats publicly distanced themselves. By Saturday, one of her business partners filed a lawsuit. By Sunday, sponsors pulled funding. By Monday, subpoenas started landing. And me? I just watched. Not with glee. Not with anger. With peace. Because I didn't orchestrate her destruction out of spite. Spite burns too hot. It clouds judgment. No, what I did was colder than that. More permanent. I didn't swing wildly. I sliced surgically. I had one rule through all of it. Do not get emotional. Let the facts do the work. And they did. She called me, of course. 4 times. Left voicemails. Texted long paragraphs I didn't bother reading. The 5th call came late Sunday night. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was raw, hysterical but controlled, like someone holding back a complete breakdown by the edge of their fingernails. You did this to me, she said. You know you did. No, Claire, I replied calmly. You did this to you. I just stopped covering for you. Her breath shook through the speaker. I'm going to lose everything. You already did. You just didn't notice until the lights went out. There was a long silence. I never thought you had it in you. I smiled. That's because you never really looked at me, Claire. You looked at the man you needed me to be, the one who would protect your lies, absorb your insults, and nod along to your games. But that man's gone. Her voice broke. I don't have anyone left. And that's when I delivered the final cut. That's what happens, Claire, when you spend your life playing chess with people who aren't even on the board. Click. I ended the call. And that was the last time I ever heard her voice. There's a strange kind of silence that follows a war. Not peaceful. Not exactly. More like the absence of screaming, where you finally realize how long you've been living with noise. When you stop flinching. When your heartbeat slows. When you sit alone, and it doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like survival. That's where I was now. Alone. But whole. Her name stayed in the news cycle for weeks. More scandals surfaced. Old associates came forward, adding their own pieces to the puzzle I had handed the world. Investigators dug deep. Attorneys scrambled. Headlines shifted from celebrity gossip to serious criminal inquiries. And yet, no one came for me. Because every document was clean. Every file backed up. Every source verified. The journalist? Untouchable, protected by his editor, by the facts, and frankly by the growing public appetite for another fallen star story. I stayed invisible. That's the part Claire never understood. Power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from being untouchable. I started making moves of my own. Quiet moves. Clients who had once distanced themselves from me now reached out with cautious offers. People respect a man who handles betrayal without public theatrics. They're drawn to quiet competence. To a man who bleeds once and then bleeds no more. A private equity firm approached me. We like how you handled your situation, the partner told me over dinner. Clean. Surgical. Disciplined. Funny how your personal destruction can become your professional reputation. I signed a consulting contract that week. My income tripled overnight. A new apartment followed, not a monument to excess, but something with tall windows, solid wood floors, and silence. The kind of place you fill with your own presence, not someone else's expectations. Friends came back, too. The real ones. The ones who didn't care about image, headlines, or proximity to influence. Funny how betrayal clarifies who's left standing with you. I even reconnected with my brother. We hadn't spoken much during my marriage. Claire didn't like him. She said he was too blunt. Translation: he saw her clearly and she couldn't stand it. No? He sat across from me at my kitchen island, sipping bourbon. Didn't think I'd see you smile again, man, he said. I didn't think I'd want to. We clinked glasses. You know, he added, you didn't just burn her bridge. You took out the whole highway. I shrugged. I didn't burn anything. She handed me the gasoline. We laughed. Really laughed. Not bitter. Not hollow. Just free. It was the first time I realized that everything I'd lost wasn't really mine to begin with. Claire was never my partner. She was my opponent wearing a wedding dress. And now, with her gone, the only person left to build for was me. The world loves a scandal, but it has the attention span of a child. A month after the story broke, new headlines took over. Some celebrity divorce, a corporate merger, a political meltdown somewhere else. The fire around Claire cooled, not because she recovered, but because the audience got bored. They always do. That's the part she never planned for. She lived for attention. She weaponized it. But once it's gone, you're just standing there alone, with your sins echoing around you. I thought that might be it. A clean ending. But no story with Claire Everett ever truly ends clean. I got a knock on my door late one evening. Not police. Not press. Not her. Her father. Now that was unexpected. Charles Everett was old money through and through, tailored suits, the kind of handshake that tells you who's in charge before a word gets spoken. The man who once shook my hand at our wedding like I was some charity case his daughter picked up. He stood there with the same thin smile I remembered from that day. Ethan, he said, may I come in? I paused, measured, and stepped aside. I poured 2 glasses of scotch without asking. The man liked control. Denying him that small courtesy was my quiet way of letting him know whose home this was. He sat, glanced around, I scanning the apartment like it was a case study. You've done well for yourself, he said. I have. He nodded. Better than I expected. We sipped. Silence filled the space between us like heavy fog. And then he cut to it, as I knew he would. She's finished. That's not news to me. His jaw flexed, but he kept his voice level. My daughter was reckless. I smiled slightly. You raised her. He didn't appreciate that, but he let it pass. Probably figured I'd earned the jab. The family name has taken considerable damage because of this, he said. And I would prefer that no additional information surfaces. There it was. He didn't come to defend her. He came to protect himself. I stared at him for a moment, letting him squirm just enough to feel it. I've already given everything to the press. There's always more, he replied. You kept meticulous records. That tells me you planned beyond simple exposure. He wasn't wrong. I had more. Financials tied to offshore deals that would drag his name into the mud with hers. Dirty contracts. Quiet payoffs. Foundations masking personal slush funds. Claire was just the visible wound. Her father was the infection underneath it. Tell me, Charles, I said, leaning forward, are you offering me money? His lips twitched. I'm offering you peace. For both of us. I chuckled. I already have peace, I said. But I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. I stay quiet. No more releases, no more files, but you write Claire out of every trust, every fund, every inheritance. Completely. Permanently. His face paled slightly. You want to bankrupt my daughter? I shook my head. No. I want to finally remove the safety net that allowed her to become what she is. Let her learn what survival feels like. He exhaled, weighing the cost. And finally, he nodded. Done. I stood. Good. As I walked him to the door, he stopped and looked back at me. You've changed, Ethan. I met his gaze, calm and steady. No. You're just finally seeing who I always was. The door closed behind him. And with that, I'd finished my last move. Not revenge. Justice. In the days that followed, something strange happened. I stopped waking up angry. No tightness in my chest. No heaviness when I opened my eyes. Just breath steady, clean, honest. The war was over. Claire was officially cut off. Her father kept his end of the deal. I made sure of it. The paperwork was filed. The trust frozen. The safety net gone. She still had whatever scraps she hadn't already burned through, but the lifelines were severed. For the first time in her life, she was standing on ground that could finally crack beneath her weight. And me? I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like some righteous avenger. I just felt empty, but not the bad kind. The kind of empty you feel when you finally drop the boulder you've been carrying for years. The weight wasn't there anymore. Just space. Space to finally build something new. For the first time, I took real stock of my life, what was left, what I actually wanted. The odd thing about surviving betrayal is that you realize how much of your world was built around someone else's comfort. My apartment? Too big for one man. My suits? Chosen for events I no longer attended. My calendar? Once filled with obligations I didn't even enjoy. Now all of it was mine to rewrite. I started simple. Sold the apartment. Bought a smaller place just outside the city. Something with a porch, an actual yard, trees instead of traffic. Something honest. Something I didn't have to pretend to like for appearances. Work? I scaled it back. The equity deal I signed had me more than comfortable. I didn't need the constant grind anymore. The more I stepped back, the more I realized I never needed most of what I once thought was success. I started writing again. Nothing grand, small essays, personal pieces, therapy on paper. Hell, I even started cooking for myself again. Not expensive dinners or takeout in fancy bags. Real food. Simple meals. My hands doing something other than signing contracts or typing emails. It felt grounding. My brother came by often. "You're different now," he said one evening, sipping beer on my porch. "I'm finally me," I said. He nodded. "You always were, man. She just made you forget it." We sat there in silence for a long time, just listening to the crickets. No noise. No spin. No one to impress. And for once, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. The best part? I wasn't lonely. See, loneliness is what you feel when you're still chained to what you've lost. Freedom is what you feel when you finally let it go. And I had let it go. Claire still existed somewhere out there, of course. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers, mutual acquaintances, social media posts, a magazine piece here or there about her attempted comeback. But none of it gained traction. The world had moved on. And so had I. The echoes of her didn't haunt me anymore. They simply faded. Because when you stop feeding ghosts, they eventually starve. Funny thing about peace, it's never permanent. Not because the past comes back to haunt you. Not because you secretly miss the chaos. But because life, in its twisted sense of humor, always finds a way to test your footing when you finally stand still. For me, that test came wearing a navy blue dress, holding a coffee cup, and carrying an unexpected smile. Her name was Julia. I met her at one of those leadership retreats my new firm practically forced me to attend. 3 days of seminars, team-building exercises, and carefully curated conversations designed to make executives feel like philosophers. I went in with zero expectations. I walked out curious. We first crossed paths during one of those awkward trust exercises they love so much. While half the room tried too hard to impress each other with their titles and board memberships, Julia stood quietly in the corner, observing, measuring, not unlike how I used to watch people. Her eyes were sharp, not hard, not cold, but alive, like she'd seen enough of life's worst to know how to appreciate the small, honest parts. After the exercise, we sat next to each other during a panel discussion neither of us cared for. She leaned over and whispered, "Is this the part where we pretend to be inspired?" I smirked. I thought we were supposed to nod thoughtfully and take fake notes. Her laughter was quiet, but real. That was the first thing I noticed about her. Real. Not manufactured. Not curated. No airs. No subtle sales pitch behind every sentence. We ended up talking late into the evening over bad conference wine. Nothing heavy. Work. Family. Life. She wasn't divorced. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't damaged trying to patch herself with flattery and validation. She was simply aware. "Everyone's broken," she said at one point, swirling her glass. "Some people just carry their cracks differently." I raised my glass. Here's to carrying it better. It was refreshing, honest, and terrifying. Because for the first time since Claire, I felt something that scared me more than betrayal ever did. Possibility. The next few weeks, we talked more. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long walks through parts of the city I hadn't visited since my marriage ended. Not because I avoided them, but because I never had anyone worth sharing them with. Julia asked questions, but never the kind Claire would have. She didn't ask about my salary. She didn't probe about my network. She didn't fish for stories she could use to measure my status. She just listened. When I finally told her about Claire, the entire mess, without sparing the ugly parts, she didn't flinch. She didn't try to fix me or offer some cheap pep talk about fresh starts. She simply said, "That couldn't have been easy. But you're still standing." That was it. No pity. No performance. Just simple recognition. And damn if that didn't hit harder than any therapy session ever could. For the first time, I wasn't someone's project. I was just me. And for once, that was enough. Things with Julia were easy. And believe me, after what I'd been through, I didn't trust easy. That was Claire's gift to me. The scar tissue she left behind wasn't just emotional, it rewired my instincts. Every compliment felt like bait. Every kind gesture came with the suspicion of a hook buried underneath it. But Julia? She was patient. She never tried to force her way in, never asked for more than I offered. She let me breathe. For the first time in years, I found myself looking forward to something other than the next move, the next defense, the next inevitable betrayal. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. At least, not until the letter arrived. No return address. No postage stamp. Just slid under my door sometime between sunrise and coffee. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Claire. The queen of grand gestures couldn't help herself. I didn't open it right away. I sat there at my kitchen table, the sealed envelope staring at me like a venomous thing. A test. One last grasp for relevance. It had been nearly 6 months since we last spoke. Since I shut that door in her face. Since I cut off her lifeline. I could have burned it. Shredded it. Tossed it unopened. But curiosity's a funny disease. Eventually, I slid it open with my pocket knife and unfolded the single page inside. No long monologue. No teary plea. Just a few short lines written in a hand that trembled slightly. Ethan. They're indicting me. I don't expect your help. I know I've lost the right to ask. I just needed you to know. I'm sorry. Claire. That was it. No manipulation. No attempt at redemption. No bargaining chip attached. Just, sorry. For a moment, just a moment, my chest tightened. Not because I forgave her. Not because I still loved her. Because it was finally real. She had lost. The persona, the image, the shield, all of it gone. And now the world she'd tried so hard to climb was chewing her up and spitting her out. And me? I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just completion. I folded the letter and slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk. Not as a keepsake. As a record. The last page of a chapter that no longer had power over me. That night, I met Julia for dinner. I didn't mention the letter. Not because I was hiding it, but because it wasn't worth mentioning. Claire didn't deserve space at that table. Julia smiled as we ate, and I found myself smiling too, not the forced grin I used to wear around Claire and her world. Not the polite mask. A real smile. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't ruining someone. It's living a life where they don't matter anymore. It happened 3 weeks later. I was in my office, going over some investment paperwork. The morning sun cut through the windows, throwing streaks across my desk. It was one of those days that felt normal, comfortable even. I was finally operating in a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Then my assistant buzzed in. There's someone here to see you. I glanced at my calendar. Nothing scheduled. Who is it? I asked. There was a pause. A hesitation. Her name is Emily Everett. My stomach clenched, not from fear. From that old, cold reflex. That name. That bloodline. Claire's younger sister. The one who always stayed quiet. The one who was different, or so everyone claimed. She'd mostly stayed out of the drama, at least publicly. She wasn't part of Claire's scandals or games. She wasn't at the charity events. I barely saw her during the marriage. And yet, here she was. I told my assistant to send her in. Emily walked in with the careful grace of someone who knew this wasn't friendly territory. She wasn't dressed like the rest of the Everetts. No designer handbag. No overpriced jewelry. Simple blouse, clean lines. Conservative. Smart. Ethan, she said softly. Emily. She sat down across from me and folded her hands in her lap like she was about to deliver bad news. I know you're not expecting me. No, I'm not. Her eyes searched mine, cautious but sincere. I'm not here on Claire's behalf. That's good, I said flatly. She has nothing left to bargain for. Emily exhaled. I know. I've been watching it all, from the outside. You didn't exactly step in while she was setting fire to everything. No, she admitted. And I regret that. There it was honesty. A rare thing from anyone with that last name. I wasn't part of the cover-ups. I wasn't part of the money, or the deals, or the scandals. I stayed away because I didn't want to be another Everett walking around with blood on my hands. I said nothing. I let her sit with it. But I need to tell you something. I waited. She took a deep breath. You weren't the first. The words cut sharper than I expected. She continued, her voice trembling now. Claire, she's been like this for longer than you think. Before you. Before any of them. There was someone else. In college. A professor. I clenched my jaw. The puzzle pieces I thought I'd already completed shifted again. She used him for grades, for access, for status. She ruined him when he tried to pull away. Accused him of harassment. He lost his job. His marriage. Emily swallowed hard. Ethan, Claire didn't just hurt you. She's been this way her entire life. You just loved her too much to see it. That part hurt the most. Not because I didn't know it, deep down. I always had. But because hearing it out loud made it real. Irrefutable. Permanent. I thought I had been her victim. But I was one of many. Emily's voice softened. I came here to say that I'm sorry. For not warning you. For not standing up sooner. She stood, carefully, like she knew she'd said what she came to say. Before she reached the door, I spoke. Emily. She turned. You're not her. Her eyes glistened, but she smiled. The first honest Everett smile I'd ever seen. Neither are you. And then she was gone. I sat alone in my office for a long time after that. Not angry. Not bitter. Just finally understanding the full scope of what I'd survived. After Emily left, something inside me shifted. Not violently. Not some grand epiphany. Just quieter. It was like pulling the last splinter out of a wound you didn't realize was still festering. The swelling goes down, the pain dulls, but you're left with the faint scar, a permanent reminder of how deep it went. The truth was clear now. Claire wasn't an accident. She wasn't a victim of circumstance or poor judgment. She was always that way. I had just walked into her life at the exact moment she needed a new platform to climb. And for years, I held steady while she sharpened her knives behind my back. But that part was done. The world she built had collapsed. The world I rebuilt was solid. Now came the most dangerous phase of all, living without it. Because here's the thing no one tells you, surviving betrayal isn't about revenge. It's about learning how to exist without the constant fuel of anger. And when you lose that fuel, you're left standing in the quiet wondering, who am I now? That's where Julia made all the difference. She never tried to fill the hole Claire left behind. She didn't pretend to complete me. She simply sat with me in that space I had earned, the space I had carved out through fire and blood. One night, over dinner at my place, I finally told her everything. Not just the broad strokes. The details. The ugly parts I'd kept locked away because saying them out loud felt like admitting weakness. She listened. Patient. Unflinching. When I finished, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for years. Julia reached across the table, took my hand, and said one sentence that landed deeper than any therapy or revenge ever could. You were loyal to the wrong person, but you never stopped being loyal to who you are. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Because that was the first time I realized the truth. I hadn't lost everything. I had lost her. And that wasn't a loss. That was release. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I visited my old house. The one Claire and I had shared. The one I'd sold during the fallout. It stood there on the corner lot, the fresh owners having repainted it, planted new shrubs, replaced the door. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It didn't feel like us. It didn't feel like her. It was just a house now. No ghosts. No echoes. No weight. I stood on the sidewalk for a while, staring at it, feeling absolutely nothing. And nothing felt damn good. I walked away, finally leaving that place, not just physically, but emotionally, for the first time since this all started. The chapter wasn't closed. It was finished. The universe has a sick sense of timing. Just when you think you're done, when you've cleaned house, paid your dues, and finally patched the holes, you get that final knock. That last, unexpected echo from the life you buried. For me, it came in the form of a phone call. Blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ethan, the voice rasped. It took me a second to recognize it. Claire. But it wasn't the voice I remembered. Not the polished, rehearsed, stage-ready Claire who used to navigate conversations like a politician. No, this was hollow. Ragged. Tired. Almost. Defeated. I know I don't deserve to call you, she said softly. I stayed silent. She hesitated. I don't know who else to call. There it was. Not love. Not guilt. Not even hope. Desperation. They froze everything, she continued. The indictment. It's worse than I thought. My attorney says I might serve time. Her voice cracked. I thought I was smarter than all of this, Ethan. You weren't, I said, cold but calm. You were just lucky for a long time. A long pause followed. I lost everything. Claire, I said, steady, deliberate, you didn't lose everything. You spent it. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every decision. You bought this ending one transaction at a time. I never thought it would end like this. That one made me chuckle. You never thought you'd have to pay for any of it. Silence again. Then she whispered the one thing I never thought I'd hear. I miss you. It didn't sting. It didn't pull me back. If anything, it disgusted me. No, Claire. You missed the version of me that let you get away with everything. She sniffled. I was wrong. About you. About everything. I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. You knew exactly who I was, Claire. That was the problem. You knew I was loyal. That I would fight for you. That I would forgive. And you used that. Her breathing got heavy, like she was trying to hold back another breakdown. I don't want your forgiveness, Ethan, she whispered finally. I just didn't want to disappear without you knowing that. I regret it. For a brief second, I saw her, not the manipulator, not the public persona, but the hollow shell left after years of using people like pawns. But pity? No. She didn't get that either. Claire, I said softly, you already disappeared the day you laughed at me in front of your friends. This is just the paperwork catching up. I ended the call before she could reply. And for the first time since that rooftop anniversary, I felt something new. Peace without weight. Not revenge. Not even justice. Freedom. She was finally gone, not because I destroyed her. She destroyed herself. I simply stepped aside and let gravity handle the fall. And that's the difference between her and me. She needed to win. I only needed to walk away.